If you're a creative freelancer and you struggle with pricing your work, or maybe you're clueless on things like contracts or licensing, if so, today's episode with Maggie Enterrios, aka Little Patterns, is about to blow your mind. Stay tuned. The Perspective Podcast is fuel for your mind and creative grind. Each week, my guests and I provide the skills for thinking bigger, overcoming adversity, and making an impact with your work. What's going on? You're listening to episode 116 of the Perspective Podcast. I'm your host, Scotty.D.Russell of Perspective Collective, and I am here to help you build a killer side hustle and elevate your brand outside your day job. At the end of each episode, I share a listener of the week, so stick around to figure out how you can get a shout out on a future episode in the show notes as well as in the newsletter. And today's guest, as I mentioned before, is Little Patterns. She is a beast when it comes to illustrations as well as packaging. Okay, she's found her niche, and we're going to talk about how you can find your niche as well today. But not only does she do incredible work that's all over Instagram and popping all over the place on Pinterest, but she's worked with some of the biggest brands in the world like Apple, Instagram, Chicago White Sox, and as of most recent, she just finished up a massive project with no other than Champagne Papi. If you don't know who that is, go Google it. Otherwise, stick around and you'll figure it out by listening. But today, we get super deep into topics on business, the things that you tell me you struggle with the most. Let me tell you what we're going to talk about more in depth. She doesn't hold back on this. We talk about pricing your work for small brands and agencies, as well as pitching your work. And we also break down the importance of contracts and licensing. There's so much gold in that. And most importantly, we talk about how to be confident and take yourself more seriously. We also talk about pizza and all kinds of other cool shit. So, if you found value in this episode today, do what you always do. Share this online, share this on your social media, take a screenshot of you listening or you working within the background. Share it over on Instagram stories, tag me, tag Maggie, so we can show you some love back. Keep an open mind and act on anything that resonates with you today. Let's go. What's going on, PC family? Today I'm sitting here with the incredibly talented and patient Maggie Enterrios of Little Pattern. Welcome to the Perspective Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
Great. Third time's the charm.
Third time's the charm. This is our third attempt of recording this. Nothing but technical difficulties, but you know, we switched mics, we switched platforms. Now we're on Skype. The video quality is probably not going to be there, but that's okay. The content is gold.
First call, we talked about both believing in ghosts, and I feel like this has been a test or like something.
This is definitely a test, and we all talk about responding to adversity. That's a big thing on this show, and how are you going to respond and adapt to the, you know, whatever's going on in your life, and we're responding right now. So,
yeah.
All right, for the 17,000th time, for those who don't know, give a brief Wikipedia page summary about yourself.
My name is Maggie Enterrios. I'm known as Little Patterns on the internet. I'm an illustrator. I focus mostly on packaging design and some branding, but my work is characterized by really dense patterned illustrations.
Dude, you have your elevator pitch down right
shorter
now.
and shorter and shorter.
You're so good. If anything, if you go on this trip or whatever you got coming up, dude, you're going to be so rehearsed for whatever you go on. So
I'm ready.
There's one positive, a silver lining. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about your backstory and how you got into doing your thing full time, because it's more than just freelance and 1099s. You're a corporation, right? Or
yeah. I'm a two-person corporation. Husband and I both on the payroll, making things happen. Yeah.
How did it get there? Because you started in tech and now you're doing your thing full time as Little Patterns.
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, I'm 29 now. So when I was in college, I went to art school in Chicago. When I was in college, I signed up at a temp agency who placed me at Grubhub, which was a tech startup in Chicago. And I was a data entry temp. So my job was to crop the logos out of scanned restaurant menus and upload them to the Grubhub site. And that's all I did every day.
Real quick. It's not input. Wait, okay. Say one thing.
Hello.
Yes, you're good. Okay, Grubhub. I wanted to make sure your output was coming in. It freaked me out for a second. Okay.
Yeah. So
go on.
So I worked at Grubhub as a data entry temp. And then the company was so scrappy and small at that point. I think there were only like 40 employees. So right around when I was nearing graduation, I was around 20 years old, I asked if I could do a few little graphic design tasks around the office. So I was kind of designing like internal posters, stuff like that. And it was like a really cartoon, character driven aesthetic. So just like using the pen tool in Photoshop and building these like really tacky cartoons. But that was part of the brand. And I just kind of started picking up hours here and there. I was working as, an hourly temp, and right around when I was getting ready to get out of school, I asked the creative director if there was any chance he would bring me on as a freelancer, and he was like, "Yeah, sounds great." I was like,
And
"What?"
you were making like a shit ton of money too, or
Yeah,
hourly
'cause
for starting off like that. Something
yeah.
unreal.
Well, so I was making like 8.50 an hour at the temp agency. And so when I asked him if I could go full-time freelance, he was like, "What's your hourly?" And thank God that I didn't just say like 8.50, because I didn't know any better at the time. And I just said, I was like 40. And he was like, "Okay." And I was like, I nodded, and I immediately like walked into a supply closet and just started like crying. I was like, my life is coming together. Like, I'm not going to live on the streets. And like,
We've made it.
yeah. So I worked there for about 4.5 years, just sort of climbed the ladder. I was brought on full time, became an art director. I actually stayed freelance for that entire time, but I was working 50 hours a week, at a desk at Grubhub. So it was kind of an odd situation. But what happened was I I was happy there, but I kind of could see this bigger picture where I knew I didn't necessarily want to do corporate style graphic design for forever, even though it was going well. So I decided that the only way I was really going to get my career to the next level was I had to take a position somewhere else, and somewhere else where no one saw me as like the data entry temp anymore. So I got a job as the art director, and effectively the head of design at this second startup. But like the day I started there, I started thinking to myself, you have 1 year. And in that 1 year, you need to build something for yourself. Like, this is a good transition stage, and it's a new job, and you don't have any of the baggage of the last job. Like, it's a chance to start fresh. But I really got serious about freelancing on the side. So I was picking up, gigs here and there, like really shitty illustration jobs.
Like how
I
much for
told
a pop per each one? Like how much were those at the beginning? Mine were like $50 a pop.
like $20 are free. I designed the only the banner for the only vegetarian stand at Chicago Hot Dog Fest, where it was like a cartoon kebab with like little gloves on. Like, I had to look at myself and do that. It was just like really bad. And I took on gigs like, like my parents would meet a woman who owned a thing with her sister, and the sister would call me and be like, "We need a logo, I'll give you $5." And I was like, okay. Like, I was getting that solid income, from my art director job. And I thought to myself, around the 6-month mark, I thought, okay, and it had gotten a little better by this point. Like, that was my early freelance gigs, but I was starting to get some at least really aesthetically pleasing gigs, for very low fees. But it was moving in the direction of little patterns. So I was getting work that was exciting to work on. I was doing a lot of concept art. So people would say, "Hey, I'm designing a wine and I need an illustration. Our budget is $200. Our budget is $400." And the artwork never went to print or never got chosen. But I was doing these little gigs here and there that I could kind of sort of piece together. And I told myself that if I could get to 15 hours a week of freelance, in addition to my full-time job, that if I could fill 15 hours with illustration, then I could fill 40 hours with illustration.
For sure.
So once I
Like
got to that
proof of concept kind of thing.
exactly, it was like, once I get to that 15-hour mark, I'm gonna quit. Like, I'm gonna do it. I have a
And
very
you'd
wonderful
been
husband.
saving up
Yeah,
too, right?
yeah. Well, honestly, I was making a lot. I was very privileged in the sense that I was making an art director salary, like with stock options. And this was my side hustle, but I took it so very seriously. Like no nights, no weekends. I mean, I was really hitting it hard in the way that I do think true entrepreneurs understand you have to do. Like everybody says, I have this dream, but I'm so tired when I get home at the end of the
Oh,
day.
I hear
So
it all the
drained.
time.
Yeah, no, but you do have to push through it. Like I was not happy illustrating until 3 a.m. Like it sucked, but I could see the bigger picture. I had a really good support system. So my husband, who was then my boyfriend, was always like, do it, go for it, go for it. And I remember
He's a
taking the,
keeper.
I kept him so far. And yeah, I remember like taking the train into work about 3 months before I quit. And that was the day that I was like, let's do it. It's happening. Little Patterns had taken off a little bit. I was getting requests where people said, the email started, I love your work, and then described what they wanted. It wasn't like, hey, we're looking for a logo. Can you do it?
And
They had an expectation.
where was Instagram and Behance? Because I know you've been using Behance. All right. So where was Instagram and Behance in the scene of all of this freelance? Were you attracting work through these platforms that everyone should be using?
Yeah. I had a Behance portfolio first. So that was like I actually had that since college. And just, it's filled with like Grubhub work and advertisements that I had done through there, really different aesthetic, but it allowed me to kind of have a platform to start posting my own style of work. I got an Instagram account, kind of started to figure out like, whoa, there's a community built into here, and decided to start a passion project, which I think is just such a good idea for anybody that's starting out and trying to build their aesthetic. Taking one project like 36 Days of Type or your own,
What was
okay,
yours? Drop caps with patterns, was it?
it was capital letters.
Okay.
So I got to L basically before my career started. So I've still never done M, which is awesome actually. but yeah, I had started doing this. I really started hitting that hard right when I was transitioning to that second big job. And by the time I took the train into work that day, 3 months beforehand, called Adam, my husband, and I was like, I'm gonna quit. Like this is so stupid, but I'm ready to do it. And it might be irresponsible and it might be crazy, but like we could do this, right? And he was like, yeah, yeah. It was just like this really good answer. Like he was confident where I was nervous. He was like, you've always been the type of person where you were going to do this, so you might as well do it now than later.
You
And my
answered
only
the
regret
call.
is that I didn't do it sooner. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I knew. So after that, I was like living a double life at work. Um, I got the gig with Apple, so I was brought on to do the illustration when they launched the iPad Pro 9.7.
What year was
So
this again, by the way? Because this is like when you got your first
2016.
opportunity, right?
Yeah, 2016. So it was 3 years
Yeah.
ago this month.
Oh
So it's
shit.
still pretty new, honestly.
3 years. Look
I
what all can change, and look what a passion project. Even if you start a passion project, you're a prime example of you don't even have to fucking finish it. It could lead to something that's next.
Yeah, never finished that. My life is 100% different. Like the only thing that's the same is my hair color. Everything else is different in my life. And it all happened when I started taking myself seriously and thinking like I'm going to build something and I'm going to put in the hours and I'm going to make the sacrifices and I'm going to fight for it. And it happened. And it didn't happen with like luck. It happened with like skill meets the privilege of having some confidence and a base of security. I had an emergency fund. I got it together is the only way I can describe it.
I think so many people struggling. When did you know that you tapped into your style? When did you know, like, this is it? I've arrived. Was it when you started experimenting and adding floral in? Because you said you've always done some
So
sort of
yeah.
abstract art growing up, right?
Yeah, and I did, I went to art school, and so much of my thought pattern was like I would like to be a fine artist and I would love to sell art. And I don't really think I realized at the time that you can be a designer. I think some of us have that disconnect where it's like you're an artist or you are a graphic designer. And I don't really think I realized that there was this niche area of desire for, packaging design that looks like artwork.
Like
Like it is art.
commercial art. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Editorial work. I just don't think I realized that was there. So when I kind of hit this point, which I do think was adding florals in, where it went from me trying to get into galleries to me thinking, wait, someone might buy this like to use it, like in an application, not just as something you stare at that's pretty on a wall. And that was what kind of flipped the switch or grew the seed or whatever euphemism you want to use, but that was what made me realize like this style is not only something I like creating, I think it's marketable. And
What
I had worked in marketing for like 6 years, 7 years at the time. So that was how my brain worked. I thought like, can I sell it? Can I make money off of it? And all of my like abstract stuff, I was like, that's cool. The only people that like that are my mom and my friends. Like, what does the mass market need and where's that opening? And I think it's in art in business.
So did something like Instagram following and all that stuff, like for me, that's what started giving me the affirmation, knowing that, oh my God, I have something here. Okay. I just was like a starving artist, or this was a hobby. And then one day it's like, wow, you catch one little feature. For me, it was Good Type. For you, it was
Type gang.
Type Gang. Was that
Guy.
kind of, for me,
Yeah.
that was like a switch of like, okay, this isn't just art. This is something that can be commercialized.
Absolutely. I mean, we live in such a, like, our whole lives, you and I are the same age, save for a few months. Like, our whole lives after college or growing up, being in our 20s has been online. And so much of what I was doing, posting onto Facebook, something I drew and having, my mom's friends telling me it was pretty, does not feel the same as
Mm-mm.
when you have found a community of like-minded people that like your work. Like that is huge because that makes you feel like, well, they're not just saying it because they're my friends. Like they're not just saying it because they feel that they have to. Like people actually are responding to it in a positive way. So yeah, finding that online community was game changer. Absolutely.
And you stuck true to your core. You're an illustrator, and we had this conversation the 3 times ago
Yeah.
about how like we're illustrators, yet at the same time, lettering is just like a channel of your illustration. You were able to tap into this other community, not only people who like monochromatic or black and white art or floral
Yeah.
related art. And you
Tattoo.
then you
Yeah.
opened it up from tattoo to possibly flash sheet branding to lettering artists. So you have your style of your niche style, your niche, whatever you want to say, and then you market it way more by adding in just lettering to it.
Absolutely. I think for me, um, being able to touch, like you said, touch multiple markets with a similar aesthetic, that's really good. And you get a very diverse understanding of the market. So, yeah, like the lettering community is very interesting to me. I can't claim to be one because I cannot letter for shit. It takes me a long time. I think of myself as doing like typographic arts or like typography has a home and a place within my work. um I cannot do cursive. Like I try so hard, it's just not in me. I don't have the background, but what I do have is a background in tattoo arts and black and white, like you said, fine liner illustration. Like there are these multiple communities that you can touch and sort of see how they're responding. And packaging design is something I've been doing for 2.5 years, like for a while of that. And that's like a whole different category.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so mathematical, so based on typesetting. And I use InDesign, which like I had not used since college. Like there are a lot of other skills that are required, but they do, like these communities combined, they do enable me to really keep things interesting while still building that brand.
For sure. I
Yeah.
want to dive into, because you know a lot from this business angle, and I know most of my listeners really struggle, sinking their teeth into the business side, putting on the business cap and turning off or taking off the creative hat, flipping the
Yeah. Yeah.
switch. What's the process like for you when onboarding a client? Where are you getting your your leads or your inquiries? And what's it like when you're pitching them, you're then pitching the price, you're presenting your concepts to them? And then I want to dive into licensing and contracts, because
Yeah.
you are a wealth of knowledge and you're going to blow people's minds with this.
Yeah. And feel free to interject or ask follow-ups along the way, but maybe I'll start at like the beginning of a project. How's
Yeah,
that?
yeah, please, just any kind of
Yeah.
project that comes through your plate. And I
Yeah.
know there's two buckets.
So, most project inquiries do not come in through Instagram. I kind of have this, I don't call it a joke, but it's like this lighthearted feeling towards leads from Instagram, because if someone doesn't go to my website, it's probably not a valuable lead. You know, somebody who actually needs work is going to take that moment to click, go to the website, read, find my contact info, send a message. But most of my work comes through my website, and people find me a lot on Pinterest. That's huge. Art directors are just like us. They make boards and they build their ideas before they reach out to artists. So I make sure that I have a presence across platforms. I tag, across Instagram, Behance, Dribbble, and my own website. And I have that all filter into Pinterest, just in the hopes that it makes itself onto as many inspiration boards as possible.
Smart.
Yeah. But like you said, there are two buckets of clients that I usually get. I have companies or people that own their own company. And then I have agencies that have been hired by companies. And those are two very different buckets, and they're very different in how you deal with them. Licensing is pretty huge, which I feel like is this kind of behemoth of uncertainty that everybody has. Like, I get so many emails and questions that are just the words, "What is licensing?" And I'm like, I can help. So the interesting thing about illustration versus graphic design is that, and I don't really know why this is, but I'm not complaining, but illustration is viewed by like the Copyright Alliance of America or something like that. Illustration is viewed as original artwork. So you, as the creator of an illustration, inherently own the copyright. That's how original artwork creation works. It is a product of your intellectual property. It is something that you create. It is yours. Someone can pay you for your time, but they're not paying for the artwork. So the way that I structure my deals with people are, it's a twofold. It's artwork creation plus a licensing fee. And that licensing fee allows you to buy or borrow the rights to that piece of original artwork. And of course, it's different working with smaller companies versus bigger companies, because so much of a licensing fee depends on the footprint of that artwork. So something that's going to be shown, one time on one limited edition t-shirt at one concert, like that licensing fee is, and should be, very low.
Yeah.
Like, you should not expect to sell that licensing fee for an astronomical fee. But yeah, if a giant company and a corporation is relying on your artwork to sell their product globally, they're running ad campaigns with it, they're doing film, they're doing print, that licensing fee should reflect the value of your work. So you want to know how I calculate that?
Yes, yes, yes.
So I know that we don't bill hourly. But I myself, my style of work, it does inherently take an extraordinarily long time.
Give a spectrum from a smaller, like a smaller agency to a small, like a brand, to like a large scale agency job. What's like the range of time?
I mean, if we just break this down into like basics, like sketching in your mind, you're like, oh, I can sketch that in 30 minutes. Sketching can take 5-6 hours. Like, you're researching, you're thinking, you're in the shower and you're like solving problems in your head. Like,
Just
that's
conceptualization.
billable ideation time. That's a long time. You're not doing anything else during that time. Like, you are thinking and focusing. So I do have to cover my own hours, which I do with my fee. I don't necessarily have an hourly fee, but yeah, a design that takes if somebody was designing like an album cover with a simplistic vector style illustration, even though I'm not devaluing like the worth of their art, yes, it does take probably 95% less time than it takes me to illustrate something. So my pricing reflects that. I'm a pretty expensive designer, if I'm
As you
being
should be.
perfectly honest. Yeah.
Well, and the
Yeah.
wealth that the knowledge that you're spitting today too, just that's bonus value, like you're educated as well. You're a
Yeah.
professional. You are a
Yeah.
professional. You're not just a dope ass artist. You are truly a fucking incredible professional.
Yeah. And it's been really fun. I have a mind for, I'm kind of like a sponge for learning this business stuff. Like I find it very interesting, and it's a very cool area to be in. But yeah. So my creation fee for artwork typically covers what would normally take me like 15 to 40 hours. Of course, it varies depending on like if a product, if I'm designing something that's like a small product, it's going to take less time than if it's a giant product. I'm at the point where I've done so many different sizes and styles of illustrations, which everybody's just going to be so stoked when they get to that point, because it's the happiest place where somebody can say, how long will that take you? And, with clients, obviously you have to let them know that there's back and forth included. But if, Adam, if we're leaving the house and he's like, well, how long do you have left on that? I can kind of look at it and go, 8 hours and 30 minutes. Like I've done it so many times, which is such a great place to be, because you're not telling the client a fee that reflects 10 hours when it's actually going to take you 50, just because you don't know. So I
You're
encourage
more
everybody.
dialed in and precise on
Yeah.
quoting hours.
Yeah. But I really encourage everybody to like track the actual time it takes you to do actual projects, passion projects, everything you do.
Smart.
Just track your hours now, because if you're building that portfolio of things that you want people to hire you for, you want to be able to know the value of that work, because in your mind, you're always going to minimize it. You're going to look at your drawing and say, oh, that took me like 2 hours. It took you 10, but you're billing your client thinking you can do something like that in 2 hours, which you probably can't, because there's a ton of back and forth in the production time. So there's that creation fee, which is like loosely based on my own hourly estimate, plus whatever file preparation I anticipate having to do. Packaging design files
Or
do
even
require a lot of math.
vectoring.
Oh my God. Yeah. That vectoring is always a line item on my invoice. So if you want it vectorized, it's either hourly. So I have like an hourly fee for pre-created artwork. So if we designed something and you want that pre-existing artwork to be vectorized, then I do it hourly. If we're starting and you may need something vectorized later on, and there are like multiple pieces, maybe I'll offer you like a couple $100 or $1,000 per piece, depending on the size of it. But that's just hours at that point. So I have no problem billing those hours, because it is so time consuming.
For sure.
And then licensing is usually for me based on a percentage of that artwork creation fee. And that is keeping in mind that, like I mentioned, smaller companies or one-time uses, their footprint is smaller, so the licensing fee is smaller. So
what
let's see.
What would be like an example of that pricing wise?
So like if I do a 2,500, I should pick a whole number. Let's say I'll do a $5,000 drawing.
Yeah.
And it's for a mid-sized company, and they are distributing in the States. They're not doing anything international. It's a small company. Maybe it's the first product they've ever put out. Then my licensing fee for that would probably be about 100%. So it would be an additional $5,000, making a $10,000 project.
And that's
If
just
that
for
same,
a short-term licensing, or
so I
is that a
usually break it
buyout?
into 1 year, 3 year, and buyout options. Most packaging people want the full buyout. And
Ching.
for those of you who don't know what a full buyout is, it the artwork is theirs to use in perpetuity. A lot of people tell you not to do full buyout. I personally have no problem with it. I think that if I'm creating the artwork for a purpose, I cannot imagine relicensing that artwork to somebody else. I think that devalues my own brand. I think that devalues the artwork that we created. I love having happy clients. I don't want those clients to feel like I'm going to jack them on something, like, but knowing that budgets are flexible, I always offer a 1 or 3 year license, which is great for somebody that's, trying out this new t-shirt design or trying out this certain product for like holiday collections. If they're doing a holiday 2019 collection, they don't need that collection in 2020. So they're more likely to buy a 1 year license. And so a 1 year license would probably be about 30% of my creation fee for a smaller company. Where if it's like a giant company, then it could go up as high as 300%. So that would be $15,000 of licensing on top of that $5,000 creation fee.
Whew.
So it really does fluctuate, which is a good time to plug my favorite book.
Yes.
Yes, which you're going to tag for sure.
While
right?
you're going to plug your favorite book, I'm going to plug in my battery cord.
Yes.
Yeah, so keep talking.
I don't have it with me, like show off style, but the graphic artist guild has a ethical licensing and pricing guidelines book, which Scotty's going to tag.
It's in the show notes. It's in the show notes. I promise you.
Yeah, it's really good. The amazing thing about this book, so one of the first big packaging projects that I was interviewing for, we talked about the project, and the company said, it was a Friday, they said, get back to us on Monday with your quote, including licensing. And I knew licensing was a thing, but I really hadn't had to work with it before. So I was just at a loss, and I was like Googling, and I couldn't figure out what to do. And then I saw this book on Amazon, bought it. It arrived by Sunday via Prime, and I was able to actually write a quote that was, really reflected current market rates based on this book. And it includes graphic design, it includes packaging design, it includes animation, illustration, technical illustration, medical illustration. It's got all these different subcategories, so you can actually look at it and say, okay, someone wants a children's book cover. I don't know what the going rate is. Do you know? I have no idea.
No, I know what the going rate for podcast sponsors are per 1,000 episodes. I know that.
The book knows. The book is smart.
The book knows.
It's like that movie Hocus Pocus, like book.
Yes, one of my favorite movies. I like creepy horror stuff. That was a good one growing up. Okay, don't jinx. Knock on wood. Sorry. Continue.
So I really recommend that you can get last year's version. You can get a few versions back for a lot cheaper, but just definitely check that book out if you haven't. Difference between something like full buyout and work for hire, like these terms that people are going to throw your way, it's there for you.
Does it talk about above the line and below the line usage and things like that?
Yeah. Okay. It's a really full and comprehensive guide.
It's a freelancer's Bible, essentially.
It really is. I mean, I preach this to everybody. I'm preaching the word of the Graphic Designers Guild.
Well, look where you are now, why wouldn't, if somebody's going to take their shit seriously, put in the work, you should know this stuff.
Yeah. And, so many people just ask the question, I, again, get a lot of emails that are like, hey, this beer packaging company wants to hire me and I don't know what to charge. Can you help? And on the one hand, I'm kind of like, I can try, but I'm not a teacher. That's not in me. I spend enough time quoting my own projects, but there are resources. So I recommend that anybody who's actually trying to get into the industry, surround yourself with resources so that you can be self-sufficient and you can find out what you should be charging.
Direct everyone to this episode.
It's worse to undercharge than anything. It really is. I have lost more gigs undercharging because someone didn't take me seriously. If I look back on emails where I was quoting projects when I first started, my quote was so low that I feel like it's the same thing as if you're hiring a wedding photographer and the wedding photographer says, great, it'll be an 8-hour shoot. I'll have a second photographer. It'll be $300. You're kind of like, That's
I
not
don't
going to be good
trust
photos
you.
for them.
I don't trust you. Yeah.
Yeah, is this person carrying a cell phone? Like, are they a college student? Like, what's happening here? It's the same thing. Like, by undercharging, you're probably also not going to get work because someone won't think that you know what you're doing.
it
Plus,
falls it falls back into the line of what you drove home earlier. Take yourself seriously. The more you continue to take yourself seriously and see yourself in this different light as like, I'm a professional, I'm a designer, I'm an illustrator. The more you continue to show up with this mindset and project it out into the world's eventually going to start aligning with it and see you as that too.
I
So no
definitely think so. Yeah. Yeah. Have fun, build out those contract templates, build out your quote template, make a little cover page when you send off your sketches, like all of
pitch
that
decks
stuff.
too.
Pitch decks, like build a pitch deck. And you know how you can find out how to build a pitch deck? The internet.
Google,
Like, it's great. Yeah.
Bing or
Like,
Yahoo.
yeah, I love Bing. Hugely important in my career.
Shush.
No, no. But like really, take yourself seriously. Imagine how somebody would like what would impress you if somebody sent you an email. It's if they have, concise, positive language, they're well spoken, they send you an organized brief, they're reliable. Like all these things are things that you should be projecting outwardly as well.
Go
So
the extra mile.
spend a little time, get organized, get educated. It's really possible. There's a lot of work out there.
Before I go into listener questions, let's pivot real quick and talk about contracts.
Yes.
I know you had some amendments and some things that
Oh, yeah.
you specifically inject there. People are clueless on contracts too.
Yeah. Also, there's sample contracts in that book. I'm telling you, wealth of knowledge. But yeah, contracts are huge. Making sure that you have your deliverables set at the beginning of a project. Um, I usually do flat fee contracts, but I include stipulations that, this contract gets you exactly 5 sketches, one idea taken to completion. It includes vector if you have added that on. That is the scope of our project. Any work exceeding the scope of that project, additional concepts, changes in direction, that will be billed hourly or will require a new agreement. Like the earlier on in a project that you can set the ground rules, the less problems you'll have later on. And it's so worth it to take the time to do that at the beginning. So one of the big things for me as well is liability. We work in an industry where somebody can give us an idea of something that they want. Like if you, Scotty, said to me that you wanted a logo and you're like, what I really want is, you know, a unicorn jumping over a moon with like flames behind it and laser beams shooting out of its eyes. I'm like, wow, how cool. What a fun idea. That sounds interesting. But I don't know if you actually just saw that idea somewhere else and you're adapting it. Like to me, it's implied that it's from your own brain. Liability is huge. What that means is like, who is the responsible party in a case of copyright infringement? So most contracts, if you get them from companies, if companies hire you, ask them if they have a general services agreement that they want to send you. Most of them do. Most of them have legal teams, at least the bigger companies do. And if they don't, it's on you to write a contract. There are lots of LegalZoom. There are tons of like legal services that you can use to look over your contracts. You can do it one time, build one contract that is your standard contract, and then you're kind of good to go from there on out. But I include a liability clause in my own contract, which basically says that if the client is the one who gave me the concept, then the liability is on them. Like if they tell me like we have this beautiful package and we want like leaves covering it, that's vague. That's on me to figure out how those leaves look. I do not mind taking on the liability in a case like that because I know I'm not going to steal it. I know I'm not going to appropriate somebody else's work. Like I can guarantee that the idea is authentically mine, but you can't be responsible for your clients.
For sure. For sure. No, that's gold. That's something that nobody ever thinks of. So,
Yeah. And I know it all sounds daunting. Like I'm sure it does sound daunting. I hear myself speak and I'm like, oh my God, I'm throwing a lot out there. But it really is also is exciting and very, like, very freeing when you're working on a project, when the project hits that point where it's starting to go to shit, and we've all been there, someone hasn't written you back in 9 days and you're like, oh God, they hate it. Like, and they come back and they've changed their mind. Like, having something that protects you from that terrible moment where you know that like you have the right to ask for more money because you agreed to A and they're telling you to do B. Like, it's daunting now. It's so much less of a headache later.
That's money.
How are your contracts?
At the moment, non-existent because I'm not doing any freelance. So
Yeah.
but I've learned my lesson with those. So yes, contracts cover my ass for sure.
I know. Oh my God.
You have way more knowledge than I do, but also you do way more freelance than I do, and yeah,
It's different. It's
yeah,
different.
I'm focused on the podcast right now.
Yeah.
Podcast and passive income. That's my goal of 2019. So,
See, I have no passive income.
I have some ideas for you actually
Oh, great.
after a call if you were interested, but it requires a little time up front, but I think you can make some monies off of
Are
it.
you gonna sign me up for a pyramid scheme?
I'm gonna sell you Bitcoin. No.
Isn't that permanent lipstick thing?
Nope. None of that shit. That's not my style. I sell value, just like
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Before we go into some rapid fires, I want to get to some listener questions, and you can just answer these quickly too. So Belinda
Okay.
Koo asks, how long does it take from sketch to completion on a typical piece? And let's just say something like a small brand to a large brand. We kind of covered it, but like, what's the smallest amount that you'll do, and what's the largest amount?
I don't think it
And you don't
happened
really
for
have
me.
time for personal projects either, but like a personal project still would go around 20 hours too.
Yeah, probably. I think around the 15-hour mark is like the drawing time, but
Damn.
the planning and all of the things surrounding that definitely take longer. And then I would say my most average project is like 35 hours. Like, that's
Okay.
kind of, it's like I have basically two pockets where it's like the 15-hour drawing and the 30-hour drawing, and then plus creation time and
For sure.
contracts and all that, just cushioning on either side.
Okay. I really like this question. It'd been great if it would work the first time around, but Lisa Quine
I'm
asked,
ready.
when did she start at the bottom and then get here? Was it God's plan? Her projects are fire back to back. I've been peeping what you bring to the table for years now, and it's just too good. And her likes go from 0 to 100 real quick. Where does she get her energy? She's got a lot of energy and is drawing every day. Okay, I'm done. Take care. Also, who's Drake? So,
I love that you had to read that multiple times also.
yeah, and Leah Chong then follows up with that is how's working with Drake. We don't have to get into it too much because we especially got some rapid fire answers to it. I want to respect your time, but just give the brief synopsis of what you can talk about real quick.
Yeah, so I worked on the mod selection champagne. I can really hear my Midwest coming out when I say that. I worked on this champagne project that Brent Hawking, who is the founder of De Leon Tequila and Virginia Black Whiskey, which was also a joint venture with Drake. So mod selection is the newest in the portfolio, and I was brought on to illustrate the outer packaging like of the bottle. So it's this really, really intricate floral design that is a nod to French history. So I got to go out to Champagne country, and
We
yeah, we indeed. I ate some really good cheese. But no, this bottle is like insanely gorgeous. It's absolutely, hands down, the coolest thing I've ever worked on. And I don't have Drake's phone number.
Was it a buyout?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Ballin'.
Yeah. With that, no, with that kind of project, like
Gotta be.
that is mod selections artwork. They can use it for whatever they want in the future, in perpetuity. Like, that is their design.
And when's it come out so we can hopefully
So
grab one of these bottles?
yeah, $300 to $400 a pop,
That's it.
which is
Shit.
why I have not opened mine yet. But I think it officially launched in January. Don't hold me to that, but it's definitely for sale. I know for certain that it's for sale in a lot of shops in California, wine shops, and then I think you can buy it online as well.
Cool.
Southern Wine and Glazer is, I think, the distributor of it. So
Congratulations on that, by the way. That's
thank you.
huge. That's
It's
huge.
really
But in my
good.
mind, you're just scratching the surface. So you're
Yeah.
gonna be hit up by like Oprah or Ellen next.
Well, that would be a dream. That'd be so exciting.
It's coming. Ask for it.
I just finished a gin label that is like, it's really one of the coolest things I've made. So I'm really excited for that to come out later this year.
Hopefully 300 to 400 too for ballers like us.
I don't think so on that one.
Real quick before we go into rapid fire questions, what's one piece of advice you give to your past self when you were just starting out?
Well, my first answer for this first time around was to take yourself seriously, but I feel like we already touched on that, but I'll touch on it again. Take yourself seriously early on. Be like that professional ice skater who started when they were 6 years old and didn't have a lot of friends because they were so passionate about their craft. Like, be that person who takes yourself seriously, and your life will be fruitful and you'll be happier. You'll fight imposter syndrome, which like I have still really bad. Like,
same.
You got to start fighting it soon. Other people will take you seriously. Be confident when you describe yourself. Like we talked about, have your elevator pitch down and say it with confidence. So when somebody asks you, what do you do? Make sure you know your answer so that you don't waffle through it. You don't want to be the person who's like, well, like I draw, but so like what I really want to do is, so I'm an artist, but like, well, so I also, well, nobody wants that person.
Don't
like,
do
you
that.
want to be able to confidently say, I'm an artist. Leave it to the person you're talking to ask the follow-up, but like practice saying that about yourself.
Money.
Yeah.
Money. I needed you to tell me that like 3 years ago.
Have you worked on your elevator pitch since we last talked?
Oh, I already got that down.
Ours were good. Yeah, ours were pretty good.
I've had to use it enough now, so I got it down.
Say it again.
Okay. My name is Scotty.D.Russell. I operate, create, and teach under the platform Perspective Collective. I'm the host of the Perspective podcast, and I'm also a creative coach helping creatives like you build your side hustle and grow your brand outside your day job.
That elevator had to be slow closing, but it was good.
I'm a creative coach. And then I just poked my head out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Elevator pitch is like, I was told, around 10 seconds to 15 seconds.
It depends what floor you're going to, I guess.
Exactly. It depends on the elevator. This is my escalator pitch.
Yeah, escalator pitch. When you're passing, going up, going down.
Exactly. You can scream it at the end. Rapid fire. If you were on death row, what would your last slice of pizza be?
My favorite pizza is from Coal Fire in Chicago. It's a sausage pistachio pesto with honey and burrata thin crust.
Freaky. If you could have lunch with one person dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Joshua Johnson, who hosts the 1A podcast. It's my favorite podcast, other than yours. No, it's actually my favorite. I listen to it every day.
I'm not offended.
Every day.
Not offended
it's
at all.
so good. This guy.
What's your guilty pleasure outside of design?
Guilty is hard, but I like cooking. Reality television.
Reality television. Are you a Kardashian fan?
No, actually. I only do shows where like someone's fighting for love, but like it's never gonna happen for them.
Brett Michaels, Rock of Love,
like The Bachelor kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, okay. No, I just watch them to make fun of people.
Okay, cool. Where do you seek your inspiration, online and offline?
I try not to find inspiration online.
I love that. I'm working on that. Take that to the bank, everyone.
Honestly, it's such a echo chamber sometimes, and I really don't want to say that in a negative way, and I don't intend to imply that other artists are echoing each other a ton.
They are.
But the thing is, if you're only getting this inspiration from people you follow, you're only getting 900 people just kind of bouncing off and on each other. It's like you're on an island, right? Like you only know what's going on that island. Mm-hmm. So I try really hard not to be on the internet, not to gain inspiration from the internet. I try to go outside. I try to learn about things. I'm a big reader. I really like stories about like mountaineering, like things that are so different than what I do, because it just helps diversify what you're working on. And you want to have a proprietary style that is not anybody else's. And I personally find that I'm only able to do that if I'm not looking at somebody else. So
Word.
I actually don't follow I follow a lot of people, but I try not to follow people that I feel I could have a similar aesthetic to. And it's not because I don't love their work. It's because I don't want to see their work when I close my eyes.
Totally get it.
Yeah.
I think that's such a huge tip. Okay.
Yeah.
Where can people go to follow you online to gain inspiration from you and support you? And real quick, give a shameless plug about your Nature and Gather guided journals.
Yeah. So you can follow me at Little Patterns across platforms. I'm on Behance, I'm on Dribbble, I'm on Instagram. I'm out in the world. I visited 36 states last year, so you might see me bopping around and you can say hi now that you know what my face looks like.
Come to Iowa.
Wow. I was in Chicago for too long. I'm not going to go over there.
I get it.
Yeah. And then I have 2 books out that were both published with Timber Press. So they're guided journals, which means that they are journals that have calendars already inside of them that are undated. They have writing prompts. You can color them. They're like grown-up activity books. And you can find those on Amazon. You can either look up my first and last name, Maggie Enterrios, or you can look up Gather, a foraging journal, or Nature Observer, a guided journal.
Even easier, go to the freaking show notes.
There you go.
I got you.
Yeah.
Stick with me real quick as I sign off. As long as it just works. Okay. Maggie, thank you so much for your time and then your time again. I know this is going to be a listener favorite. For real, I appreciate the hell out of you and the knowledge you dropped today. I can't wait to drop this one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hopefully we don't have to do this a 4th time. And the next time it can just be different.
And the next time it'll be different stuff in the future. You were totally going to be on again. Thank you again. Have an incredible day. Enjoy your trip.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. PC family, there you have it. Maggie, aka Little Patterns. She showed up and absolutely crushed it. Your head might be spinning a little bit, just like mine was, but if you're trying to take your freelance game seriously, this is the shit you need to know. Right? You need to know how to price your work. You need to know how to value your time. You definitely need to protect yourself with contracts and no licensing, okay? Don't let people take advantage of you. You need to know this shit. You need to learn it. Everything Maggie and I talked about, all her resources are listed in the show notes. There's a link in the description, or you can go to perspective-collective.com/116. But Maggie, thank you so much for your time. And PC fam, you know what to do. If you found value in what Maggie shared today, and I know there's so much gold she dropped, go and show her some love. Go follow her on social media, blow her up on Instagram, send her DMs, tell her what your biggest takeaway was, but make her feel loved today, because after 3 attempts, you know, she put some time into this, all right? And Maggie, we appreciate you. Thank you so, so much. And if you find value in this show and value in this video experiment that we're doing, there are 2 ways you can support the growth of the show. First off, you can financially back the show over at patreon.com/perspectivepodcast. And the second way is by subscribing and leaving a rating review in Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever your floats your boat, whatever platform you're on at that time. And by doing this, you get put in a position to become the listener of the week. And this week's listener of the week comes from Riveting and Revolting from Austria. And they title this Great Podcast for Creatives. They state, Scotty has great interviews with big names in the design and lettering world. Each episode is super informative, and he does a great job breaking down key takeaways and giving listeners actionable steps to grow your creative game. That's it. Simple, to the point, takes a couple minutes, and it puts you in the position to get some public love from me. So thank you so much for everyone who's taken the time to leave a rating and review, as that also helps me climb the charts. Thank you. And as I wrap things up, I got to give a huge thank you to a couple people. Áine, Brennan, Paige, Garland for being editors of this show. Also my homie Colton, Bachar for all the video editing he does. Colton, you're the shit. And then my homie Blookah for all the dope theme music you hear on this show. And as you finish off your week strong, I want to encourage you to keep showing up, keep putting in the work, and keep creating. You got this. Thanks again for listening. It'd be awesome if you took the time to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and let the comment below so we can connect. Again, if you want to catch a shout out as a future listener of the week, make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes and give it a rating and review.